This is the PowerPoint covering the causes for World War I. The acronym that we're going to use to memorize and to learn what the long range and immediate causes of the war is MAINS, with the long range causes being MAIN, and then the immediate cause being S, or SPARK. M stands for militarism, which is essentially using the military to glorify your state, glorify your country, using it as national policy to gauge your strength over someone else. Basically, arm races, seeing who could build the most sophisticated, developed military over anyone else in Europe. And of course, when you do that, there's only one way to prove that, and that is to use it in a conflict. A is alliances. Now these aren't in any particular order. They're all equal, and they all kind of happen at different times, but they just for memorization's sake, we put it in a word. But these alliances happened in the last decade of the 1800s and going into the 20th century, and that the alliances, the first alliance occurred, and after Germany had created its large empire, and in the 1871 Franco-Prussian War. In Germany, because it had gotten so large, it was feeling that other countries were wanting to get revenge, mainly France, and they wanted to surround France with finding allies that would try to protect each other and prevent a French retaliation. So Germany allied itself with Austria, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Um, Germany and Austria, of course, traditional Germanic peoples, found common ground there. And then Italy, of course, created that wall that separated and isolated France into the ocean. And Germany was counting on the fact that France would be standalone and would not be able to get an ally in Britain because of their age-old hatred of one another. So now we're going into the 20th century and into 1900, and France is isolated. And the feeling is that now Germany really could take over all of Europe if they wanted to. And France appeals to other European countries, Russia, and even Great Britain, and says this is not a good thing. And so, if Germany annihilating France means that they could go and annihilate anybody else, and so France goes and makes an agreement with Russia and Great Britain, which is historic, of course, because France and Great Britain have never been on the same side, to make sure that if one of these countries were attacked, then they would be able to defend against the mighty Germans. And this is called the Triple Entente. Now, it's going to change when the war starts. The names are going to change. Italy's going to drop out. The Ottoman Empire is going to jump in, and it's going to change names. But this is how it starts. And it's picking sides, as in if any, dodgeball game or anything like that. Why do you pick sides? Why do you have teams? Only because if you don't, then you're going to get beat as an individual. So that's another kind of tick towards getting towards war. Militarism and alliances. I is imperialism. We know that a ton about that. Imperialism created another form of competition, another form of saying we have more than you, and so therefore imperialism was another example of competition among Europeans that is going to lead to war. And of course, we know of the Boer War in 1899 between Great Britain and the Netherlands, and that happened in South Africa. And you had skirmishes like that going on all over the world, and that of course is leading up to this event. And then nationalism, militarism, and nationalism kind of go hand in hand. Militarism is probably technically an offshoot of nationalism, but it's still it's something that had been brewing since the mid 1800s. And this is something that had been warned against after Napoleon, but also nationalism was something that came about. If you remember, we just talked about this earlier, that that came about as a result of kingdoms and empires dying down and saying, I want my country, my culture to be represented by one country, a modern state that is unique. And in the process of doing that, people are sticking their chest out and saying ours is better than yours, um, and we need to prove that through whatever militarism, imperial colonies, and then eventually that, of course, is going to lead to conflict. And then the S is spark. And what is the spark? Um, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Now, Archduke Franz Ferdinand is the last of the Habsburg line ruling over Austria-Hungary. I'll go back to that map you saw just a second ago. And Austria had actually conquered Bosnia, and were wanting Serbia. They wanted Serbia, and Serbia had just won its independence from the Ottomans. They did not want to be under the rule of another empire. And so the Archduke Franz Ferdinand visits Bosnia, who they have just conquered, and they're going through a big parade and a big, glamorous setting and saying, we're great, and Serbia, you're next. Well, a Serbian nationalist group called the Black Hand knew where Franz Ferdinand was going to be on June 28, 1914, in Sarajevo, Bosnia. And as you can see here, this is this is before the parade. Him and his wife Sophia in the back of a car, and they planned to attack and kill him. As he's driving through the streets of Sarajevo, they throw a bomb in front of the car, the motorcade route. It goes off prematurely. It doesn't harm Archduke Franz Ferdinand. They reroute the motorcade, and they then are now going down a route that has a hairpin turn, which they had to slow down greatly, which they were not intending to do. When he does that, that is when Gavrilo Princip, the 19-year-old nationalist, jumps up on the running boards and fires into the back seat, as you can see in the picture here. And then he is quickly captured, arrested, and then ultimately executed. Now, this is why this area of the world is known as the powder keg. And so that's, when you have a powder keg, it's a big barrel full of gunpowder. And if you have a spark around it, that's not a good thing. So, Serbia wanting to remain free, but now they have been held responsible for killing the prince of the large Austro-Hungarian Empire. So now Austria-Hungary sees this as a chance to have a reason to take over Serbia, much smaller, and gives them a list of ultimatums saying you have to meet these in 24 hours or we're invading you. Serbia, of course, cannot meet these demands. They're impossible. They attempt to, but Austria then declares war on Serbia. Well, if you remember, Serbia is in Eastern Europe, and Eastern Europe is Slavic territory, Slavic lands. And their Slavic cousins are the Russians. And the Russians tell Austrians, do not invade Serbia. They are small, you're huge. We will declare war on you if you declare war on Serbia. And that is what happens. But when that happens, if you go back to the alliances say, I've got your back, you've got my back, that if one country goes to war with the other, then they're going to war with all of them. So when Russia declared war on Austria-Hungary, it declared war on Germany and whoever the other members of that alliance was. And so that's what set everything into play, was this event. And so here's what the map looked like of the alliances when the war started. The purple countries are the triple alliance, and the green are the allies. The purple used to be called the Triple Alliance. They become known as the Central Powers. The green are the Triple Entente, and they become known as simply as the Allies. You'll notice that Italy drops out pretty quickly at the beginning of the war, having no desire to be involved in a war of this sort. And they pick up the Ottoman Empire, which is down in the bottom right-hand corner. Now, of course, you might notice that this is not what Germany and Austria wanted, and so they needed to address this in the proper way, and we'll explain that in the next slides. All right, and that is the next presentation.